I've been on the road, I've been doing shows. Now we eating steak, remember sleeping on the floor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is our episode number 4. We're on number 4. I'm Alex Rogers.
I'm Bryan Mulvany. And today we have with us Mr. Josh Hall. Josh, you wear lots of hats.
Do you really wear hats, though? I don't think I've ever seen you in a hat.
My head looks weird in a hat.
Really?
It does look kind of weird. Yeah.
I kind of have this vague vision. Hold on one second.
They're good.
I had this vague vision of back like Manial days. I feel like you wore a hat backwards.
Yeah, the back. And I had much more hair back then, idiot. Like I wore a hat when I had all the hair.
Yeah.
And now
this guy had hair.
Go back. Yeah.
My wife is on a mission to turn my son into a hat wearer because
It's
we've
cute.
been married. We've been together for like 15 plus years. She's probably seen me in a hat 3 times, maybe. And she likes hats. I don't have the head for hats. But Josh, you do lots of things. For people who don't know you, how do you, I don't want to say classify, but if somebody says, hey, what do you do? What do you tell them?
Great question, because it's very hard as an entrepreneur, as I'm sure like we've all discovered. Now I say I teach business owners how to build a web design business. That's my quick answer. It is kind of tricky because I'm a course creator, a YouTuber, a podcaster, virtually, first time in person. Should I look at the camera, by the way?
You're good.
Is that
Look me in my eyes the whole time.
I've been doing a podcast. I've been doing a podcast for 4 years, but I've never done it in person.
We positioned the chairs so that we're good.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
As long as you don't move your head outside of the range of the map.
All right. Yeah, I do a lot of different things. It kind of depends on the room I'm in, though. Like, if it's a grandma who's like, what do you do, Josh? I'm like, I have an online business. Even that may be a little
a little much for grandma.
If I'm talking to Alex, I'll be like, yeah, I have a coaching program and online courses and do podcasting, video, and stuff to support it.
Right. The whole online coaching or courses world is is fascinating to me because I feel like today people would take an online course for anything. I mean, if you want to do something, you could probably find someone who has a course.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing one for mowing, like grass.
Get out!
Yeah,
get out of here.
The next phase of my, I'm going to do like a lawn weenie brand one day.
Really?
Sure. Yeah, because I'm getting pretty damn good at it.
Pretty good at
it.
If you want like an example yard, you can do my yard.
Oh yeah,
I hate mowing.
A case study.
It's funny you say that because there are people who there are things that they get excited about and there are things that they don't get excited about. I don't know the last time I mowed my yard. And I'll just pay whatever kid is willing to come do it. I'm like, yes. And then I look at my neighbor's yard. Like the other day, my buddy Dustin cut a nice checkered pattern into his yard. And I was like, that does look pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to do it, but that does look really cool.
But you may focus on something that I have zero interest in. We do a lot. For me, the lawn is my own little area I can control. And I got 3 young kids, 3 under 5. It's absolute carnage and chaos.
Sure.
Love them to death. But the yard is the one thing, quick job. Because a lot of my projects will take months sometimes to get out. And the results I see from my students will take months. But this is I can just make a nice little diagonal line. It looks great. Feel good.
It's what I like to call...
no horizontal stripes for me.
No.
Honestly, I used to love it. It wasn't a time when I put my headphones on and I could just do me until I have a dog that has bigger than life human crabs. Now, this is St. Bernards. I mean, they're huge, right?
Gotta get those up.
And when kids don't get those in the pile, and then I slip, I can't tell you how much times I've almost done the splits. But I will say that it's called a false sense of accomplishment. I enjoy vacuuming a room because it's a small area. You can see the lines when you're done, and it's clean. So I get that.
So that is interesting, though, because it's with anyone whose work takes months to see a result, I do think it's important to have little wins in there. Yeah. It's like you lose 100 pounds. You don't go out to lose 100 pounds that week. You got to have the quick wins and milestones. So
he probably said that because he saw me lose weight. Just
I did not.
Drinking your Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Yeah, I can. They can. I can.
But to that point, the online course world, it's wild. I mean, even when we started our networking group, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, now, online courses were drastically different. And the tools you needed to do them, the equipment, it's all different.
I mean, can somebody, is that if you had let's just use lawn, taking care of your lawn, could you make I mean, can you make income because people want to buy your course and know how to take care of their lawn? Like, do people do it to make income or do people do it to connect?
Both. It would depend. Yeah, it's a great question. So online courses are either, if it's a passion project, you could do it, but I said that kind of jokingly. But
right.
I really probably am going to do a lawn weeding brand one day.
Yeah.
The trick with that, though, is I'm not helping people make money. So for me to justify charging for it, I would need to do something low cost and very at scale. I would need to probably have like thousands of people to buy a $9 course. But
if they bought a $100 course.
Yes, my coaching program right now, people are paying quarterly $600 or $2,000 a year. So I don't need that many clients to make a healthy six-figure business.
Right.
So yeah, it is online courses. It's all about the result. That's what justifies you charging for it.
Because then they can take that knowledge and go do it themselves.
Yeah. So with me teaching web design and the business side of web design, I can say for $2,000 you can join my program annually, but I will teach you how to charge $5,000 for websites. So it's like $2,000 is a no-brainer. Because in 3 months, if you can charge that, then
it's funny that you say, like, you're sitting here today and you're saying, well, now I can do this and I can do that. I remember, and we'll leave names out of it because I don't know whether they were actually supposed to be employed at this place or not. I remember sitting at hotels and you sitting in a corner teaching yourself code. Like, while we were like, one of our buddies worked at a hotel and he was like, hey, come on over. There was like a game of some sort. I'm sure there were adult beverages involved. And you were like teaching yourself code. Like back, I think you were even taking it to like Columbus State.
Yeah.
Like the very first, like, and is it crazy for you to think teaching myself code to having students?
Yeah. I mean, that was probably what, maybe.
Oh, I didn't have kids. I don't think Courtney was in the picture. Like yeah, at least.
Yeah, I remember that. I think I was on a deadline too, so it was like I think I had worked the day, and I was like, I have to get this done. I think I was like going to state, and I was like on some design programs and coding. It is wild. I mean, right now I'm basically what I do now is I'm teaching Josh 10 years ago. So I put myself in a position of what did I need to hear 10 years ago. In my case of web design, to learn web design, the most important aspects, and then build my business. So that's kind of that's my mindset now. And I reflect on all those memories. Like, what did I do? Like, those pain points and challenges I remember.
Because that's where your kids are. That's where the students are.
Yeah,
I guess most of them probably aren't kids.
And it makes it relatable. So I think if anyone ever gets into a coaching position or an online entrepreneur position, it is really beneficial to have come from that industry and to have a path that you know very well. And everyone's path is different, but I know the challenges of starting my business. And I mean, at that point, what was kind of interesting, Bryan, is when we were all hanging out, I was becoming a business owner, but a lot of my friends weren't. And
keep going.
So this is really tricky. This is really hard. And this is actually why, I have a big presence in the online world, but not as much here locally in Grove City, because I come out, but most of my attention, if I'm not with my family, is online. That's where the majority of my relationships are. What I realized in that was I had some great friends and stuff, but at some point I can't go out at midnight on a Wednesday. Correct. I have a meeting tomorrow morning and I got to be fresh for it. And I love to hang out and have a good time just as much as anybody, but you do get to a point where the priorities shift. So at that time, I was merging, I was still hanging out. It was
literally in the moment, getting ready for the next moment.
Yeah, I was hanging out, saying hey, having a drink, but also getting shit done. And or a lot of people I feel don't make that transition.
I think it's an interesting point. At some point, you have to understand it's okay to have a common past with someone, but if you don't have a common future, you're delaying one for the other.
That's well said.
I think.
Yeah.
But
I agree. That's very, very
I watch
well
a lot
said.
of people struggle with that. They're my boy. Yeah, they're still my boy, or they're still my friend, but we just don't have anything in common at this stage of our life.
And maybe, Alex, you've seen this too when you get into the entrepreneurial world. It's your conversation, your interest changes, and then when you're stuck in the old conversations of the past and just reminiscing on good high school days and stuff, it's all right, I'm pretty bored.
Yeah.
Let's talk about business and online stuff and stuff you're really interested in.
Right.
If somebody's not it's not that you're better than them anyway. It's just you're in a different path, a different journey.
That's kind of like when we were hitting that point where a lot of us were having children, and the people that weren't having kids or weren't interested. I'm like, man, I can't go out. I can't do anything because, I've got kids. My money's in a different place now. And they just didn't get that.
And my priorities are in a different place. It's not that, And so that's why, Courtney and I joke all the time, that's why we put a bar in our basement. Like, if you want to come over and you want to hang out, great. The kids go to bed at 8:30, come on over. I'm not leaving the house at that point, but there's a bar in the basement.
Something I wanted to touch on too that I found interesting you were talking about was with the whole lawn thing. And then when people ask me what I do, I heard the term serial entrepreneur, right? Because it went from me doing my own thing as freelance and then starting a social media marketing business, and then that evolves into video, whatnot, and starting the studio, for other creatives or other renters. That whole thing where maybe I get bored, so you jump to the next thing, the next focus, just to challenge yourself. But when people ask me what I do, it depends on the audience. What you want to say, or are they a potential client? Are they in the circle? Will they even understand what the heck I'm talking about? Is it an opportunity at that point? Which I know is kind of different on your end because it's you're digital, like you said, your community's there. But would you say you're in that boat? Would you say the whole starting the courses from actually being that because you needed a challenge, or because you were bored and wanted the next level? Or
so there's something I've found in the entrepreneurial world called the 7-year itch. Okay. Yours, Alex, may be the 7-week itch.
Yeah, right. So it's the ADHD.
But there is something to that. So I guess for anyone who doesn't know, for context, I was a freelance web designer and built my web design business for nearly a decade, and then I sold it and teach full time with my online courses. Now, in that time, it was 7 years exactly that I started teaching. And that actually, the seed for that planted when I started doing a mentor program over here at the Career Academy.
Yeah, which I'm still in.
Yeah, are you still in that?
Yeah. Jay's always like, he might show up, he might not. I'm like, I know he's not going to right now.
I have not been able to make a meeting in like 3 years.
Yeah.
But
Jay, whoever Jay is, he's holding out.
Yeah, Jay DeMasso. Shout out. But so I got invited somehow to be a part of this program, and they would sit us down for like 6 hours in the day with kids who were into graphic design or web design or 3D. Most of them wanted to do game design, knowing they wouldn't be able to hit deadlines, but they thought designing games were cool. But I just showed them what I was doing. And then some kids were like, you make a lot of money doing this? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you just work from home? I'm like, yeah, sweatpants, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what got the seed planted for me to really start enjoying teaching. So that was like maybe 5 or 6 years in. And I started being interested in teaching, and then I got some opportunities to blog for a popular WordPress site, which is like the platform for web design. Yeah, a lot of web designers use. And then, I just had an opportunity to start doing that. And then eventually I got to the point where I had started building my personal brand, which is just joshhall.co. That's what everything's through. And then I started being known as like the web design guy. And then, here's one thing that's interesting is I did not put enough value or stock into what I had learned and the experience that I had accrued in 7 years. I was thinking like, I hit 6 figures 6 years in. So I was like, there are people who have multi-million-dollar agencies and stuff who would want to hear from me. Right. Turns out,
everybody that was like you,
a lot of people don't know how to make 6 figures.
Right.
Like that's enough to support a family.
Right.
If you're diligent with, and once you hit 100,000, you can hit 150 and 200 and $250,000. So I was like, shoot, I started just sharing my processes, and then I came to find out most of my processes were learned the hard way because I didn't go through any courses when I started. I did everything the wrong way, like the hard way, which is why I help people avoid that. But I say that to say, like, all those things told me, like, wow, I've got 7 years of experience in this industry, and I've made 6 figures now. I'm building recurring income. I got clients. Like, I can start teaching this.
Yeah.
And I don't need to have a degree. I don't need to have a certification. I'm just sharing what I know, and that's become more and more popular in the online world. It's like, no one goes to an online course wanting to know what are their accreditations.
We were just having this conversation the other day.
Transcript before you can sign up.
No one says, what college did you go to for your online course? No, it's like, how much money did you make and how can you help me? That's what they want to know.
Right.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
No. Actually, it was Friday. I was judging the senior projects in Jay's class. And they're standing up there, they're nervous, and I'm acting like I'm hard, but I'm not. I'm just really excited that they're excited about, digital, design and photography and stuff. But they said something, and this kid was really focusing as a creative. This kid was really focusing on, I'm certified in Illustrator, I'm certified in this, and I'm like, do you know what I'm certified in? Like, do you want to know the last time, a client said, let me see your resume? 10 years from, it's been that long. Like, they don't care. They want to know what I've done. and what I can do for them at that point.
Look, I don't want to devalue college. I'm not an academic, though. But, strong C students right here,
right.
baby.
I'm with you.
But C's make great entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What I found, though, is in 10 years of building my web design business, here's how many clients asked me about what degree I had.
Yeah.
Right. Zero.
Yeah. Zero for everyone just listening. Yeah, zero. I never had a client say, "What school did you go to?" No, they looked at my portfolio.
Right.
And they were interested in
I want a
ideas.
website that looks like that.
Yeah, and they're like, "You did that site for that company? I'd love to do something like that."
Yeah.
So, in the entrepreneurial world, in the online world, everything's different now. The world has just flip-flopped with opportunity, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It is very challenging, though, and it's more and more cluttered, and it is not easy. That's one thing. I have a colleague whose podcast, I don't know if you're familiar with Amy Porterfield. She's one of the biggest online marketers. Her podcast is Online Marketing Made Easy. And I love Amy. I love what she's up to, but it is not easy.
Yeah, right.
That is exactly why I never went
loaded.
easy. There is not one mention of easy in my stuff because it's not easy. And it depends on what your background is. I have one student who I sold my agency to who built his web design business to 6 figures in 1 year. But he was an entrepreneur through and through. He had already had established businesses before. He already knew how to market and was not afraid to sell. So he got there way faster than somebody who
has to learn all these things.
has to learn everything. I had one student who was a school teacher, and she's doing great now, but it's taken 5 years to get to this point where she's really starting to crush it. But it's a natural progression depending on your background.
Well, I think you said something that was interesting. You said it's not easy. It might not be easy, but it's a whole lot easier than any other generation ever had it.
True,
when people are like, I don't know how to make money, I go, I don't think you want to make money. It's never been easier for somebody to maybe not get 6 figures, but it's never been easier for somebody to start something that relatively lives online. You know what I mean? And so, when I hear people, I'm just not a big complainer. I have zero patience for complaining. And when I hear someone say, well, it's just not that easy. It's really easy to get started, but then you found out there was work involved. Right. And that's the part that you didn't like. You didn't like the late night. You didn't like the early morning. You didn't like the maybe not everything goes your way. But it's never been easier to start.
Yeah. You have to choose your hard.
Correct.
That's a quote that I've heard going around recently, and I was like, God, that's so true. Yeah, nothing is easy. What successful story had at a beginning?
I just woke up and I was in the Olympics.
Yeah.
I just woke up.
Now, I will say there are things you can do in your business that might be easy to you that is a nightmare for somebody else.
Sure.
I enjoy talking and podcasts. That's why podcast is a great marketing channel for me because I can do an hour and a half conversation and love it. It gives me energy. Somebody who's more introverted and somebody who that's draining, they're going to dread a podcast. So to them, I would say, what do you enjoy? What type of marketing fills you up and what do you like doing? Do that.
And I think that's the point I was trying to make is everybody has things that they like. It's never been easier to monetize a whatever you want to call it, passion, hobby, interest. It's never been easier to monetize that than it is right now.
Oh, 100%.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, everything, all the aspects. The technical stuff, so I teach web designers, plenty of DIYers, do-it-yourselfers can build their own websites or get affordable help. The tech, there's webcams that are fine. You don't need to have super fancy lights or super fancy tech to be on camera and build a course. And I built my first courses barely on camera. It was all just screen recordings and stuff. So there are different ways you can build your business online that suit you. But again, I agree, Ryan. It is easier than ever to do that. But I do stress to people that don't make the mistake of seeing these entrepreneurial stories that say, I just started my business and I'm taking vacations 8 times a year and I'm traveling and
Correct.
I have my laptop at the beach. No one wants their laptop at the beach.
No.
There's sand everywhere.
Right.
It is not easy. Now, however, I'm at a place 14 years later where things are much easier now than they were before. But it's because I've built these skills and these muscles.
And that's the part they heard everything you said.
Digital muscles.
They heard everything you said, but they missed 14 years later.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the part that people miss. It's like this selective hearing. I heard what he said. He built a business and he takes vacations. Yeah, but the part you missed was 14 years later.
Do you ever find that in the classes or the courses that you do sell? they're trying to make that business to sell and they don't hit it? Do they feel? Have you ever been in that instance? I'm sure you have, where they're like, I did everything you said. Why is it not working? Sort of.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah,
because your
correct.
program could make like somebody could be like, this is amazing. They're a super fan. They built their business. Things are clicking. Somebody else could go through the exact same program and they're like, I'm not getting any clients. Why isn't this working for me?
Right.
I'm like, well, there's a ton of variables.
Right.
Like, are you getting out there? Again, like, are you marketing towards a way that suits you? Like, how do you sell? Are you confident? Do your designs suck? Maybe we need to work on that before you sell your So there's like a lot of variables. That is the hardest part about teaching. I'm sure any teacher, whether it's in person in a school, whether it's online, you probably see it as a coach. You probably have kids that excel and then other kids that are flopping, and it's like, we did the same workouts. So well,
and it's to your point, it's like, I have very little to do with their success or their failure. And like you created an environment and you created a roadmap, but you can't walk it for somebody.
Yeah.
You know
So
what I mean?
to your point, Alex, it's like, I can give them all the tools and insight and experience that I have to help them, but it is not I can't live and die with their success. It is ultimately,
but that's hard if you've never been in that role. The first time you have somebody come to you and you think you're going to teach them and you want it for them more than they want it for themselves, it's really hard to deal with. You've never dealt with it before.
Yes, I had one last year that crushed me, and I'm 5 years into my course creation business now, so it's like half of the time I was in my website business. I'm like, holy crap! I'm like, half the time I'm a course creator. Yeah. Well, I had one where I had this student who took his business to 6 figures in I think it was 13 or 14 months, just over a year. Super entrepreneurial, motivated guy, grew his business, straight A, grade A student. Yeah. Gave me great testimonials, followed all my courses. One day I went back, I had him on my podcast as a success story. A couple months later, I went to his website to link it and to show somebody, and it said, "Thanks for the memories." Oh. And I was like, what happened, Nick? What happened, bro? So I reached out and I said, hey, man, I saw your website. I said, what happened? And he's like, oh, man. He's like, I just burned myself out. And he's like, one of my clients actually gave me an offer to come in-house, so I just took it. And I've got a young baby, and it's more security, so he took that. And I was like, I understand that, but I was like, oh, that crushed me.
You were there.
Yeah.
You were there.
And then I had people listen to the podcast and stuff message me and be like, hey, what happened? The dude who you just had on isn't doing it anymore. And then I had to explain.
And then they're like, well, does your stuff really work?
Yeah. And so then I realized too, here's another interesting thing is I can teach somebody how to do stuff, but I can't manage their personal life or their time management. Right. Or are you burning yourself out? So now, interestingly enough, now I'm actually working on a set of resources that is all about managing your personal life and business and reeling things back and work-life balance. And
so does that go back into your workshops at that point?
Yeah, I'm kind of working on different levels right now. The next evolution of my online courses are to help people build their business, and then to help people in the middle grow the business and start to scale. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the people who are at or close to a 6-figure range, we're working on scaling, team building, time management, stuff like that, to where we're working on non-burnout, non-overwork.
Well, I think that's a good point that you made is, there's what you do and then there's who you are. And eventually those two worlds are going to meet. You can't keep those worlds separate forever. Yeah. If you only have your stuff together and you're only making the right choices at work or whatever it is that you do, but in your personal life, it's falling apart and you're not making good decisions and you're not, whatever, the amount of examples is infinite. Yeah. But eventually those two worlds will collide. Well, and you can't keep them separate forever.
Exactly. And you also don't know, as a teacher, so you need the example of me doing my work while we're hanging out in a hotel. 100%. How many people would not do that? Correct. And I'm not trying to boast myself up, but I am somebody who is highly motivated and self-motivated. I'm going to get shit done over everything else. Sure. Now that has pros and cons too, particularly in work-life balance with family, because there's been times where I will just work. My issue is not going to work; it's to stop working. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even mentally, one of my favorite quotes I've heard that has stuck with me from years ago. Actually, no, who was it? There was a different quote that I heard with you at a different time. But this quote was, "Wherever you are, be there." Yeah. And it's a really important quote when it comes to running your own business, because that idea of being present when you're with your family and not thinking about business stuff, or you're on vacation, you're thinking about your business, you're in business, you're thinking about going on vacation. That's a really tough balance in your mind, and it's all in your mind as far as like focusing and being present. So, yeah.
And at the end of the day, like I had a guy that we all know, and he called me one day, and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "We gotta come up with a plan." I said, "What do we gotta come up with a plan for?" He's like, "We gotta make $1 million." I go, "I don't know what I would do with $1 million." He's like, "Yeah, we could do this and we could do that." And I said, "What? For what reason?" And he goes, "Well, to make $1 million." For me, in my world of real estate and different entrepreneurial endeavors, anybody that makes it to that level has sacrificed things that I'm not willing to sacrifice. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not here to judge, but this is wife number 2, or this is wife 3, or my kids are somewhere else this weekend. Like, there are things I'm not willing to give up for any amount of money.
Yeah, something more recently I've really thought about is the idea of, in every opportunity or every new product launch, new service, new venture, you have to ask yourself, at what cost?
Yeah,
sure.
So if I'm going to do this, and I'm not saying that everyone who makes $1 million is all stressed out.
Correct.
Because there are people, but typically the people who get to a 7-figure range and don't kill themselves or get divorced over it are experienced. And
Sure.
or they're delegating like crazy.
It was 14 years, not 14 months.
Yes. And by the way, speaking of like if you want a successful business at any level, you're generally going to have to get some help.
Correct.
There's just no way you can do everything these days.
It's something I struggle with, actually, that Bryan has been lecturing me on about delegation, and it's the whole, holding on to everything. When you create something, it's like, say, you were back in the day, you were creating a website, and say you had to hand off the rest of it, the final cut of it, and you're like, I know, but it's my work. You know what I mean? It's my baby. They like what I do, sort of piece, and I struggle with that.
Yes, we all do as creatives. Losing the control is like the hardest. That was the first biggest mindset hurdle that I overcame when I started scaling my web design business. Right. People worked with me, like Josh was their designer. Mm-hmm. So I had to create SOPs, standard operating procedures, and things in place to bring some people in to help me do the task. But to your point, real quick, Bryan, so $1 million, 2 of us $1 million. Okay, well, all of the tasks and all the things that it's going to take to make $1 million.
Correct.
How many hours are we talking about?
Correct.
But
at what cost is not always a financial cost.
Yes, it's great point. Yeah, it's like, well, okay, am I not going to see my kids for 3 years?
Correct.
Or am I not going to spend time with Courtney or
I'm
whatever?
out.
You're out. But if you have people supporting you as a team and you can delegate, well, then it becomes much more feasible.
Sure.
But that requires a whole other set of skills when it comes to scaling.
I always tell people, I didn't get married so somebody else could spend 40 hours a week with my wife.
You know
what I mean? I didn't have kids so somebody else could raise them.
Yeah. So I work less than 30 hours a week on average.
Yeah.
Some weeks less, some weeks a lot more if we're on a launch, depending. But very rarely on average, and Emily will tell you this, my wife, rarely over 30. Lately it's been like 20. It's been bad, but we have 3 young kids and we're in a season.
Right. But again, 14 years later.
Yes, and 6 people who work for me in
Correct.
contractor roles.
Yeah.
So that's a biggie. Like I have a full-time, well, not a full-time VA. She works probably about 30 hours a month for me doing VA work. So I've had a podcast for 3.5 years. The only way I've been able to get out a weekly podcast and often 6 times a month podcast is because I don't do the distribution at all. I record it, I create some notes, I have my system in place to where I send everything out. I have an editor who does all the editing, all the uploading. She does all the VA and distribution, posts it on my site, kicks it out to the places. And then I have a social media guy now who posts all my social stuff.
That's
so I don't post my social stuff unless it's like me with one of my
kids.
babies at home.
Right.
But I say that to say, like, the only way I can be as present online as I am right now and generate as much as I am right now is because I have...
And be present in the real world.
And be present in the real world.
Correct.
Yeah. Without
sometimes people miss which one's most important.
Yes, good point. Yeah, and that's a struggle too sometimes, particularly if there's weeks where I want to get a ton of stuff done.
Yeah.
But we've got like 4, like this week we have 4 appointments for all of our kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna have to balance that and everything else going on.
And I think the thing about working for yourself or being an entrepreneur is you can manipulate when those 30 hours are. Do you know what I mean? Like those 30 hours don't have to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Those can be, hey, like people will joke, one of my lender partners, she's like, I know I'm not going to get you on the phone from 4 to 8. I was like, yeah. I was like, you're probably not.
Yeah.
I was like, my kids get off the bus or home at 4 and they go to bed at 8. I go, I'll call you back. You know what I mean? If there's not something pressing or we don't have something scheduled, I'll pick back up, 8 to 9, spend some time recording before we go to bed. But that's how, you can control when those hours are.
So you texted me at 10:30 last night, and
right?
That's
exactly
I'm still
working.
That's exactly
right.
when I logged in to do a couple emails.
Right.
And I was like,
what do I got to get done and
Yeah.
make sure is ready for the week?
Yeah, it is really interesting because the idea of the 9 to 5 is just dead.
Yeah, for most professions,
or at least the online world, it's gone. That's like there is no need for a 9 to 5 40-hour work week. COVID, it's funny because when COVID happened, everyone joined my world. Because everyone joined the web design creator world because it's like, well, welcome. We do Zoom calls. We don't get,
we've been doing this for a while.
Sometimes we don't see people in person for a while. Yeah.
We've owned stock in Zoom for 10 years. Welcome to the party.
Nothing changed for me those couple of years, which was fascinating.
Right.
It was really interesting because it just taught me that and not just web design, but any online world was a little bit ahead of the game because we don't do anything in person, typically unless there's an event or something like that. But that idea is, there's no reason for a 8 to 4 work day.
Courtney and I saw COVID very differently, right? She worked in a hospital.
Oh, yeah.
She worked in a hospital, and I didn't have to see anybody unless I really wanted to see someone. You know what I mean? And so she would come home, and she'd have one opinion, and we would talk about it. I go, honey, outside of your world, that's just not the opinion.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting time to, I think it'll be interesting how history looks at that, those 2 years, 2.5 years or whatever.
And I should say too, it was kind of a general statement, but when I said the 9 to 5 is dead, that is in context of an online business.
100%.
Yeah. Like a hospital.
But even in Courtney's world, even in her world, travel nurses wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? And so it's interesting, outside of that specific industry of healthcare, education maybe, but even education, what do schools look like?
I would say too.
What do schools look like?
Well, and I would say too, as far as an adjustment, everybody joined our world, being online, right? But I had to adjust because the kids were at home, and I had to teach the kids, right? And I shouldn't have been a teacher. There's a reason I'm not a teacher,
no one should have,
right? I would have stayed in the teacher's lounge all day long, but there was no teacher's lounge, right?
Right.
And I was frustrated. Actually, I was pretty mad at first because I'm like, how can I have actually
get anything done?
Yeah, how can I run 2 businesses, but be a teacher all day long? And that's where I had to adjust at that point. I was frustrated. I'm like, okay, let's do something about it. And now it's kind of sticks with me. People are like, oh, do you ever sleep? Because I'll be sending out emails at 4 a.m. Mm-hmm. And I'm most productive, literally 4 to 4:30 in the morning until the kids wake up. It's my productive time.
Yeah. And
then I have a little bit of time when they're in school because I know you're getting ready to go through this, but it seems like school goes so fast. I wish they would stay there just a little bit longer.
So fast.
I drop them off. I got to go pick them back up again. So I have that little bit of time, and then that way, as an entrepreneur, I get to spend time with my kids the rest of the day. You know what I mean? Until they go to sleep, and then I'll wrap things up at that point.
There is a big mental mind shift with the idea of here's the objectives I want to do this week or get done. And you can segment, you can space it out. I'm a big fan of a book called Deep Work, which really helped me feel comfortable with turning everything off, no phone, no text, no notifications, no email, and just getting something done for 2 hours at Transcend over here at a coffee shop or whatever it is. And it is amazing how much you can do in little segments.
I don't think I could do that because of the social world that I'm in, but I will say I think that's why I'm most productive at that 4 to 6 o'clock hour. No one's awake. No one can notify me.
It dawned on me when I was a web designer, when I was building websites. I'm so sorry, this chair is so loud, but hope that's not picking up.
Just don't fall off of it.
Yeah, that would be the highlight.
The video's going out today.
It's going out. It's on the reel. It's the blooper reel. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So as far as the time thing, when the world was quiet, when I was a web designer, I did some projects on Saturdays. Rarely, but I was I got a deadline. This week was busy. We went to the zoo on Wednesday, so I'll work a little bit on Saturday. And it was the most tranquil, amazing day because no one was emailing, no one was calling, and I was just getting my website done. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, No one's saying I can't do that on Tuesday.
Right.
All I have to do is be in control of my notifications.
Right.
So this is a biggie too. Like, I don't know from your guys' perspective, but I don't expect anyone to give me an immediate response ever.
Anymore.
And I feel, and just
realty in the realty world is probably
but even in my world, it's
and
even in my
depending
world
on the context. Like if we're launching a website and the client's calling about an urgent question, sure. But if they're like asking about something that's not urgent, then yeah.
Correct.
I would say building that basis of when you're first building a business, you feel like you need to get. I still feel that way sometimes, depending on the client, of who I'm working for, or who wants an answer right away, because you don't want to lose that client. Sometimes it's like when you're starting out, it's the only client base you have.
Yeah.
You need to build that name. But then after a while, I've learned to let that go. As you were talking about notifications, I mean, it's so easy with your phone, no matter what you're doing, to like start doing this. I have found myself more and more. I'll hit it. I'll say mute for today. Mm-hmm. Like I know, it's just bringing me anxiety, and then I can't work, and then everything's screwed at that point. I'm like, well, looks like I'm working on a Sunday. You know what I mean?
There's really so if I were to coach you, Alex, if we're coaching second time,
hit me. I'm right here.
I would say, Mr. Alex,
step into the studio.
What I would say is there's two type of client communication relations. Like you're talking to people when they're about to sell, like you're selling, you're about to close them. So yeah, you don't want to like not talk to them for a week if they're ready to buy a website. Right. At the same time, you have to work-life balance and make sure you're not doing that constantly. But you also have to maintain communication during a project, which in your case may take a while, may take months. So what I've always recommended is like if you have urgent situations, you could have, and I did this for years as a web designer, what I call a reactionary block in my day, which was always from 3 to 4. Every day, pretty much, I would have 3 to 4 blocked out for reactionary work. Mm-hmm. So it was just like a project. I was like, now is my time to get back to people. If you get back within 24 hours, you're usually fine.
Sure.
And then I had no one to get back to. Cool. I could work on a project, or I could go play tennis, or whatever.
Right.
But having a reactionary block every day or every other day was hugely helpful. The other thing is, you could... When it comes to like the ongoing client work, one thing that was really beneficial was a non-notification update. So like when you're working on a project and you have nothing to tell them because you couldn't work on it this week, you could still say, hey, just heads up, still working on everything. This is where we're at. Right. That is key. That is crucial. Like there's been plenty of times we've all had contractors that do work and it's like, I would just like to know like where things are at or what's going on.
Right.
Even if the update is there's not an update.
Yeah.
To your point, at least I know, okay, you're still thinking about me.
Yes.
Right.
Every week, ideally, if it's an ongoing project, is key. Because, the worst thing you can do is just, in any service, start, like, have them pay you and then just disappear. And I learned that in web design. I had a lot of clients who were like, hey, John, like, the email that I dreaded getting that I teach my students to avoid is the email that says, hey, wondering where things are at with the project. Mm-hmm. That should never ever be on the mind of a client in any service, whether it's realty, whether it's social media. You should be proactive, but you can schedule those things. And I'm not, coaching you, Alex, but just everyone who's struggling with like the reactionary whack-a-mole of email, text, and calls. Right. Yeah, you gotta just reel it in. You gotta segment it, and you can literally make it a part of your schedule, make it a project.
Right.
I was trying to pitch. There's this family in Columbus. They own all the Paneras, like in Ohio, right? And I had seen one of them at just the Grove City Panera here, and I was trying to pitch them on something. And I would start to notice like a pattern. I would send him something, and then I got something between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. And that was when he responded, right? And to your point is there are things that, hey, I got to take this call, right? And I'm sure you've looked at your wife and said, hey, I got to take this call, and they understand, because there are other times when you don't have to take that call. Yeah. Or it's I have my little pre-things loaded in my phone when someone's calling me, hey, I'll get right back to you. Hey, even if it's just hey, I saw you, I recognize that you need me or you need something, and I'll get right back to you.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this can be avoided if you just tell your clients your active windows of when you get back.
Sure.
Like, like Bryan's not going to be there from 4 to 8. So now we know. Right. Like, even if I text you, I'm not going to expect it immediately. You'll get back to me when you can. But you can also like schedule your emails to go out at like 7 a.m. You can write it at 4, but then have them go at 7. And like clients aren't expecting.
Because then your training. I heard somebody explain to me one time the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule. Right. So the golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, what is silly rule? Like, you know what I mean? Like we've said that a lot as a society, but what a silly thing. Like, I don't want to be treated the same way you're treated, and you don't want to be treated the same way I'm treated, but you want me to treat you the way you want to be treated, right? So the golden rule is treat them how you want to be treated. The platinum is treat them how they want to be treated. I had this lady walk into my office. She goes, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I fired my last 2 agents, but I'm interviewing you to be the 3rd one. Here's all I want you to do. I just want you to text me, because my job involves me, being kind of out and about, and my phone can't ring all the time.
Yeah.
She's like, I want you to text me, and I want you to be honest with me. I go, you fired 2 people over that? She's like, they would call me, they would email me, and I thought to myself, why? Like, she's like, they insisted on me working a certain way, and I don't understand that.
But on that reactionary note about kind of training people how you want to be treated too, I've had clients in the past where they expected me to get back to them right away. I mean, they just had that mindset of whether it's, a CEO of a company, it's just like, if I want it, you're getting it, almost as if I was their employee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if I found myself responding right away, like getting nervous, responding right away, and then he expected me to be that way every single time. He was training me the whole time.
Yeah. There's beauty about being super responsive in the sales process, but then when they expect that through a 3-month period or whatever it is, that's where it's dangerous. The other thing is, it really is about communication expectations. That's really what we're talking about, and setting those expectations with how to communicate, where to communicate, when to communicate. Like, I hated getting texts for website updates. So I had to vehemently I never got mean with clients, but I said, hey, this goes through Basecamp.
Hey, Gary Sigrist.
Yeah.
Hey, Gary Sigrist.
Sorry, Gary. I just saw my Kroger last week. Great client, A client. Actually, Gary was really good. Shout out to Gary.
He's a liar, Uncle Gary.
Oh, yeah, no. He was actually really good. Don't fire my agency here. Gary, because he's still one of our clients. I still am kind of a consultant for my agency, by the way, so I kind of keep a foot in that. But anyway, the idea of these expectations. I had so many clients who would email me on Friday night and say, "Hey, Josh, I have this idea for the website or an update," and then here it is. Monday morning, they're like, "Hey, did you see the email? Did you get the update done?" I'm like, that was Friday at 10.
Right?
PM?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, I didn't work over the weekend, but I learned I had to tell clients, these are my working hours.
Sure.
If you want something done by Monday, we need it by Wednesday, because these are our working hours. And it really is as simple as that, to just lay out those expectations.
Just being open. And
now, I see what your point is with communicating like someone wants to communicate.
When it matters. Like if she told me, hey, I want you to text me between. I need a text update at 6 o'clock every day. I'd be like, that's between my 4 and 8 window. We're going to find something. I'm okay with the method that you want to use, but we're still going to work within the confines of something that works for both of us.
So there it is. Yeah, because I heard somebody say, I forget how it was phrased, but it was basically you communicate however your clients prefer to communicate. I'm like, well, they probably haven't been in web design, because you can't collect content via text.
Correct.
I had
you can't text me what I need.
Yeah, I was on a walk with my daughter taking a picture, and I had a client text me one time updates, and I'm like, I lost it. I was like, oh my God, this is changing right now. I went back home and laid an email and said, no text. I don't. And then I had an automated response that said, got your message, please email this. That way, every time I got a text from my client,
boom.
Yeah, and it wasn't big. I mean, I get that some people are busy. They're
right.
And I knew, as a service provider, I'm working 9 to 4 or whatever, but my clients might be working in a full-time job, so their time to work on their website work is at night and on weekends. So they can contact me, but it's through these channels.
Correct.
And it's through
and this is when I'll get back to you.
Yeah. So sorry, a little passionate about this.
No, and to add to that too, something I had to learn the hard way when I first got into the corporate world from being an EMS a long time ago. One thing I had to work with. Shout out to Fred. He taught me a lot. Big scary guy. Like you, but way taller. Just like yeah.
Fred, I don't know. It sounds a lot like
he was our operations manager, and he would send me stuff, and I was just scared of him, like his presence, right? And he was my boss, but I'd be like, oh man, he's mad at me. Like I would literally drive 30 miles back from a hospital because he wrote this email where like, I'm getting fired today, but he had to teach me the hard way. He's, dude, I wasn't mad at all. Like it didn't bother me. He goes, there's no something he told me, I'll never forget. There's no tone in text. There's no tone in email, right? And he goes, never read into tone of an email, because how I think, how I operate, like if I was upset and I said something over email, you might write the same thing. You're not upset. You're just getting your thoughts out.
Sure.
Because you got to operate a business. And that blocked me for a long time, because I get in my own head. Does this client hate me? Now I got to focus on them, not give enough attention to the other clients.
That's such a good point, Alex. I mean, everybody who has been in business has struggled with this, because the tone, you don't get that tone through text, and some people text and email very differently. I like adding punctuation. I like adding exclamation points. I love emojis.
Love exclamation points.
But I have a lot of people who are all lowercase and no punctuation and very bland. And I'm like, I would never do that. And then, and sometimes it can come across like, wow, they hate me. Like I am the worst person in their world. No, I'm
always wrong when I think that.
My dad is like the king. It'll be like 4 literally letters. It'll be like a 4-letter response followed by 10 emojis. And it's like, he's excited.
And look,
he's fired up.
Outside of the business world, we've all, and this is a whole different podcast topic, but like kids and texting and messaging, that is fascinatingly terrifying.
My daughter will never have a phone.
With how like you don't
as long as I can handle it, she will never have a phone.
Communicating through text and messenger adds so much conflict to a relationship. Like, so case in point, how many times have we talk to our significant others, and if the text is sure.
Yeah. Oh, I hate sure.
I have no idea what that sure sounded
there's
like.
a yes or there's no. Yeah. There's no sure.
There's sure or sure.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
The best example I ever heard, and it has stuck with me today, I probably heard it 10 years ago. You get a text from your significant other, 4 o'clock on a Friday. You're trying to decide, am I staying at work, am I finishing, or am I getting home early? And the text says, hey, honey, kids will be home soon. We got to have a meeting before they get home. I'm figuring out a reason to stay at the office, right? Or I'm finding some project to work on. Now, change one word in that text. Hey, honey, kids get home at 4. We need to have an event before the kids get home at 4. Now, I'm finding a reason to get home. Yeah. You know what I mean? One word in a text, no context, no nothing, but as a... And your significant other wouldn't have thought. They would think a meeting either way. But you, as a guy, you heard event, and you're like...
Right. That's where emojis come into play.
Yeah. Yes. And it is tricky now, because now I used to be so long-winded in all my messages when I had more time. Oh, yeah. And when somebody would give me a quick little response after a long email, I'm like, how dare they? I spent all this time in this beautifully
I get that too.
Punctuated email, and I get back a one word or a one
line thing.
Yeah. But now I'm becoming the one sentence guy because my time's so thrift. So I'm having to be very brief. What I am trying to work on is sometimes now I'm kind of becoming not harsh, but a little almost too to the point, and then like the tone
it can come
across I actually
not warm and fuzzy, Josh.
Yes, and that's
which is not who you are.
No, not at all. And even if I meant it warm and fuzzy, it's just that
doesn't mean you can't be direct.
No, I was getting like Bria just fell and hit her head, and now I got to like zip something off real quick and go. So it was like that. Yeah. So it's a good point. Like. I mean, ultimately, I think the encouraging note is, like, you cannot let somebody's message affect you, good or bad.
One way or the other.
Which is really hard. It's a muscle. Like, it's a confidence thing. It's also an empathy thing where it's like, well, Alex was kind of a dick. Like, maybe he didn't mean to sound like that.
Right. That's not who he is. The other day, perfect example.
Can we say that, by the way?
You're fine. Whatever. The other day, I had known the sales rep. And I get to the office, and they're talking about this company in this sales rep's name. They're like, oh, I think his name is Adam. It's not Adam. But I think his name is Adam. I was like, that's not the Adam that I know. So I picked up the phone, and I was like, hey, Adam. I was like, this is the situation. This is how it unfolded. I got to imagine this wasn't you. You know what I mean? And he is like my best friend now because he didn't even know his reputation was in question, all because of a mix-up in a name. Right? And to your point is, that's not who, like, if you know that that's not who that person is, or that's not what they meant to say, sometimes that's all it takes. It's like, hey, I don't think he meant that.
Yeah.
I don't know him as that kind of person.
And sometimes too, I think it's all about where you've been in life.
Sure.
And like the things you've experienced, because honestly, I think I've thought about it a lot since then. After my first son had passed away, I just like blank. There's like a lot of months where it's just like I don't remember a lot of things, right? And I'm sure I was the biggest jerk in the world to random strangers. Somebody's in the parking lot of Kroger's moving. I would probably honk my horn, and that's not who I am.
Sure.
Right? And you got to put in perspective. So I kept that with me. A lot of people, I'm with, and somebody does something like a jerk, they'll like flip me off, or whatever, and I just let it go. And I'm like, you don't know what they're going through right now.
That's
like they may be rushing off, to save, their marriage, or their grandma just died 20 minutes ago. You know what I mean?
That's
so
a beautiful
it's perspective. Yeah.
That's so. Yeah.
They might be a jerk. That might just be their life. But I don't know that.
Or
I can't judge them
most of the time, they're not a jerk.
Yeah.
Right?
It gets down, so I'm so glad we're here because I knew this quote was going to come up at some point. And I went to one of your ACN meetings years ago, and some guy was speaking. And I took my notebook. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
It was you, me, and Aaron.
Yeah.
We went there, and I still have it written down. There was a quote that has stuck in me ever since then, and it was, the quality of your life will depend on how well you communicate.
Yep.
And that, my friends, is that's the goal. Because like every circumstance, sales, relationship, team building, whatever.
Your spouse.
In texting, like your friend there who didn't realize he was coming across like that.
Right.
If you really focus on how you're communicating, it solves a lot of problems.
The quality of your life will be directly affected by your ability to effectively communicate.
All right, that was a little longer than mine.
Right?
I got it.
That's the idea. You better learn how to get your stuff
we're
across.
Work on brevity for
You better learn how to get your stuff across. Yeah, Larry Raskins.
Okay, that's what. Yeah, it's such a good quote, and that affects business. Like if you're the person, look, you don't want to be the person who people sigh when the phone rings. Yeah.
Or email dings or whatever.
It's Bryan. No, you want to be like, it's Bryan. Let's chat.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You either bring the energy up or you bring the energy down. There's no, you walk into a room, or in today's world, it's your name on the notification, and people are either excited or they're not.
It's working.
Yeah. Having kids now, right? Starting without kids and now having kids and having a spouse, and what's that been like? Just trying to keep priorities in the proper place.
Yeah, that's it. It's everything is priority. And actually, more recently, I've learned that so many people focus on productivity. Mm-hmm. What I've personally learned is that priority is way more important than productivity. Because you can be head down, getting a lot of stuff done, but if you're not doing the right things that are going to give you more time or move the needle, as they say in business terms, that's a problem. So I've learned the most important thing I can do every week is look at what I want to get done, what's the priority, that will dictate everything else. And that's really important in my situation. A lot of parent entrepreneurs and parent business owners, when we're not working likely 40 hours a week, or we are, it's at 4 a.m. when we get up or whatever. So I think the biggest mental mindset barrier I went through with that was I have a very blue collar background. And I was a cabinet maker for Creative Mobile Interiors over here off of 71.
Musician.
And a musician, two very different worlds. But through both of those, I learned to do the music thing in the off hours. But 7 to 4, I'm working. Mm-hmm. And when I became an entrepreneur, I had a lot of guilt when I wasn't working between
7
8
and 4.
And 4.
Right.
Yeah, it was really, really tricky and really hard. I couldn't take a Tuesday off and have some fun and not feel I should be working.
I should have done something.
Yeah, I should be doing something. And then that's just completely changed over the years to where now I don't have guilt if we're going to, if I take my daughter to a therapy. Yes, I would like to get some work done, probably, but
there's no more important place you should be.
Right,
to your other
priority.
point, wherever you are, be there.
Yeah, and priority. So that's been the biggest difference. A short answer to that question is I have learned not to feel guilt when I'm not working in the typical 9 to 5 hours.
Sure.
I'm fine with working if I need to on a Saturday morning for a little bit, or
right.
It just depends. It all balances out. If we go to the zoo on a Wednesday, then depending on the rest of the week, maybe I'll do a little bit of work at some point during the weekend. But that's the trickiest part.
And I think it's different maybe for people, in your situation. Is Emily working?
No.
Yeah. So I think that's a whole different world, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes people will come up to me and they'll say, man, I want to do what you're doing. And I've never not had a spouse that worked, and worked big girl jobs. You know what I mean? Not that there's, she's always worked and always supported me. And if we ever needed to, the agreement that we made was we could live on her salary if we needed to live on her salary. And then so the things that I was doing were ancillary, right? And a lot of people don't have that to fall back on. And there's lots of pressure. And there's lots of if this doesn't succeed, I'm not only letting myself down, but now I'm letting down my whole support system. Yeah. And when you don't have that, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we're in opposites there because I've been a sole income since 2015 when we got married. She's doing the business for a little bit as kind of VA work, and then it got to the point. With kids, it's like stay-at-home moms. God bless them.
Right.
Which I'm kind of part-time stay-at-home dad too. Like we manage it and balance it, but
which is why you had kids. I always tell people like nobody had kids nobody had kids with the thought of somebody else is going to see them more than I am.
Yeah, and this is a biggie too because there's so much more I've wanted to get done probably this year, halfway through. But I'm like, you know what? Am I going to look back and say I could have launched 2 more courses in 2023? And like, man, I wish I didn't spend as much time with my newborn. No, like I can always launch more courses, and as long as I'm meeting what we need to bring home and got some profit left over and all that good stuff, then it's fine. That's the biggie though. I think with anyone driven, you do have to be okay with like good enough
for
a little bit of a season, which is very, very tricky when we're all perfectionists and control freaks and we just want, let's go, baby, let's go.
When you know you could do something
you
different.
could do more. Yeah. And there is a balance. Like I'm not saying that anyone should not do more.
Sure.
And there's times, again, it's seasonal. Like hustle culture is interesting because I think it's different now. I don't know your guys' take on this, but a few years ago it was all Gary Vee, hustle, hustle, hustle. And then it's like, well, that leads to burnout in most cases, unless you really get at managing it. So I tend to hustle, and what I've learned to is to hustle in seasons. So if I'm launching something, I let him know, hey, next month it's going to be a lot of work and a little more hustle. The month after that, it'll be a take
go on
easy.
Vacation.
Yeah, go on vacation, or we'll have light weeks. And it's very different with our current situation with my daughter recovering from a traumatic seizure and
but because
a newborn, like we're in
because of the work you did before, you were able to be present during that time.
Exactly. Yeah, the work that I've done, teaching myself at a hotel at Friday night at
allowed
11.
you to be sitting at a hospital room when you needed to. You wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think to your point, it's you mentioned Gary Vee, and I think, to his credit, if you've followed his stuff over the years, even his narrative is changing.
It has
his narrative is now like, the video that goes around now is we need to change what we define as success. Well, that wasn't his narrative, at the beginning. But now it's like if you're happy with your work, or you're happy with what you got done or what you have, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I have a bad habit of throwing people under the bus.
No.
Giving additional context. I am a big fan of Gary Vee. But
100%.
It does just that. I think the hustle culture, and going back to my example with Nick, my student who burned out, that's where that's dangerous. Because somebody who's driven and maybe a little ADHD could go and not reel it in. And it's good.
And you can't never catch it.
Yeah. The only reward to like going super fast and doing everything yourself is burnout. Like really, that's it. Unless something changes,
or worse, like in the scenario of wife and kids. Like burnout is, you can recover from burnout, but personal stuff,
divorce,
is worse.
Family, bad relationships with kids. That would be
terrible.
And you said it earlier, like how many quote unquote successful people you look at now, and then they're like, oh yeah, well I'm paying alimony and I've got child support or whatever. And it's like, oh,
we were talking about the Joe Rogan podcast earlier before we got on the Ric Flair episode. He says he pays like $2 million a year in child support.
I saw something about Nick Cannon coming out with his 89 children. So
that's
89. Yeah.
But there's just things I'm just not willing to give up at this point in my life. Like like later, like when my kids are out of the house, maybe. But like right now, I'm not. There's things I'm just not willing to give up.
Yeah, priority and at what cost? That's
correct.
That's a biggie.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in.
You ever have deja vu before?
I've never been here before.
I have right here.
You just
I'm looking at
now.
Probably because
that's why I was like looking.
Probably because you're in my podcast early on, so we just we had a podcast.
Well, I'm just like looking at him like I remember seeing this. I'm just like,
you guys need me to leave? Do you like our back?
No, I'm good.
You like our back?
What I also saw doesn't end well for you, so
no. It's like one of those things.
Yeah.
This has been no. I'm good on time. I'm not in a big rush. But this has been great though. Yeah, because all these things, like regardless of. I don't know if you have an exact topic you want to hit with me, but I mean, I love talking about this stuff because
I think not enough people talk about it.
Yes,
I think they only talk about, to your point, what were my numbers, how many months, what did I sell, blah blah blah, and they don't talk about the back end.
And that's kind of where, personally, with my high level stuff, I'm starting to do more resources on avoiding overwhelm. And actually, funny enough, I did a podcast episode recently with overwhelm in the title, and that was a huge one. Just so that tells me, like, wow,
a lot of people are looking for
overwhelmed.
that.
Yeah, like I'm at a place where I know how to combat that for the most part, but I have to remember, especially like Josh 10 years ago, if I had a family, now we're looking at a very, very different situation. So,
sure. How long you guys been married?
2015, so 8 years.
Yeah.
8 years now. Yeah, and yeah,
marriage changes, kids changes,
everything.
Things.
Yeah, everything changes, the way you handle business, and
for me in a positive way. Like, I'll say that to people sometime. I'll go, yeah, marriage changes things, kids change things. But I chose those things.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up and accidentally get married.
And
I didn't wake up and accidentally have a kid.
Good call. I did learn that recently with 3 littles. You get 4. We all have multiple littles. It's like, it's a lot. And I have to remember, like, if I'm ever complaining about it, which I don't do often, but sometimes
but
it's
you find yourself. Yeah.
And it's like, no one, like, forced me to
have kids.
Make kids, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, it's like, it is one of those things where...
Twist my arm. Okay.
Yeah. All right, I guess I'll do it. You evolve. Like, your business evolves. You as a business owner evolve with the different seasons. The really cool thing about that is the kid effect is real. Meaning, you, like, everyone with kids typically make way more money working like a quarter of the time, which is really interesting.
Have to.
So then it's like, wow, maybe 10 years ago when we didn't have kids, what if I delegated and had a different mindset? Right. We could have gone on vacation every 6 weeks or whatever it is. So, there's a lot to that with, again, balance, priority, focus, all the things.
Yeah, the old saying is if you need to find somebody to get it done, find somebody who's busy.
Yeah.
Right, because they'll find a way. I mean, they're just used to finding a way to get things done.
You know what's interesting about that? I built my personal brand and was doing tutorials on YouTube and starting to do courses, all within very constrained time frames. Like, I was still scaling my business and running my agency, so I was working maybe like 15 hours a week on my personal stuff. And when I went full time and I had like however many hours a week, I thought I would feel free and I would be able to just wake up and I'm going to go write and I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to a coffee shop. When it was opposite, I felt completely daunted and overwhelmed because I had all these ideas that I wanted to make happen and now I have the freedom. But freedom is an interesting thing in the context of business because it's like you have to reel yourself in.
Sure.
Like on the other, what's the old quote? Like on the other side of the coin, like the other side of freedom is responsibility. Like you have all this freedom, but you have to be responsible for what you do with that, time constraints, limitations, and segmenting things out, making projects out of visions. Right. So that was an interesting kind of mind shift I went through too, was like the freedom that I had, but I felt overwhelmed and I was like, what the hell's wrong with me? I just sold my agency. I
did it. I did it.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the, to your point, the project is if you don't, I love to use the analogy with people is that your life's like a bicycle. Like if you're not moving towards something, you're going to fall over. Right. And a lot of people, right, when you're a kid, you put adults on like a pedestal. And then when you grow up, you're like, wow, that person's going to do the same exact thing for the next 50 years, and then they're not going to be here anymore. Yeah. And it's like that. I don't know. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah, you need like an outside, not force, but you need outside input.
Something to pull you.
Yeah, you need something that changes your direction or changes your mind, especially if you're looking to like level up or go somewhere else, which is really tricky. Like, and that's where like locally, there's a couple mentors here who helped me, but I didn't have too many people locally who were in my world. So when I got to the online world, that's why I started investing in courses. And like, wouldn't you believe it? Books changed my life. And podcasts and things where like there was very different insight from people in different places of the world that make an input on you. Yeah. So.
Sure.
Let's talk about texting and distractions.
Yeah. And when you're listening to this and there's an awkward conversation and pause, it's because we're all looking at a phone. Wow.
No, Alex is just giving me a glazy stare.
I just like, I'm trying to remember.
I don't know where this is going.
He looked at me. You looked at me. You're like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, I've seen this before.
I thought it was either a really good question or a very awkward invite.
Yeah, right. What are you doing after this?
I did wear my polo today.
No, it's interesting, coming from, like we've touched base. I know before even, I jumped on your podcast, see each other in Kroger every once in a while, say hello. But, for those who don't know, we all graduated, together, high school back in the day. And since it's reeling it back into Grove City, because it's Grove City today, basing it in the community. You're in the community, you're coaching, you're, doing real estate in the community. I'm doing what I do in the community, a million things in one.
I'm keeping my lawn nice and tidy.
Right.
Perfect for the community.
Yes, they're perfect for the community.
The home values.
Right. So I don't have to hear it on Grove City Connect of why Josh isn't mowing his lawn as much as,
Right.
But I think it's very interesting, pulling those influences and how people, I'm big on sociology, but how people go different ways. We all started at the same spot. Mm-hmm. We left at high school. We all stayed in the community, but our influences, our mentors were in different directions, and you going out into the world. I had this very big thing where, when I go overseas, say, I'm in Europe or whatnot, on a vacation, I feel so tiny when I get back. I'm like, there is so big of a world out there where I could be doing so many things. You know what I mean? There's, for as far as like business or traveling more, and you come back to Grove City, it's my hometown. I love it. But I feel so tiny, when I come back here and making such a small impact in the world. But I try to make a big impact on a small community here. And, your name is everywhere. Honestly, your name's everywhere.
Is it?
It is. And I was telling him earlier, before you got here, I'm like, well, I watched part of his podcast this morning because I get your, premiering in 30 minutes. I get the notification. I'm like, well, I gotta wait for
YouTube,
yeah, for YouTube. And but it's like it's out there. Your followers just watching people commenting on your stuff. When your podcast is going, you're making a big impact on Grove City. If anybody were to ever ask, you're in Grove City, and it just puts people on the map.
There's sorry, Bryan.
You're good.
There's a book called Hell Yeah or No.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recommend enough that everyone read that. So it's a really small book. I got through it in 2 days, which is a remarkable feat.
Start from left to right.
Yeah, the author Derek Sivers, I had him recently on my podcast. He founded a company called CD Baby, which was the largest distributor of independent music. My band used to sell our CDs to them. But anyway, the point he makes is that in that book, Hell Yeah or No, he makes a point like you can choose to have like a really big impact with a small group, like staying in Grove City, and that's like Hampton's probably a good example. I listened to the episode, like he's making a really big impact here. He might be known some other places, but it's likely that everyone knows Hammy in Grove City.
Yeah.
Do people call him Hammy?
He got a lot of names.
He is now, maybe. Yeah. Now I'm probably not too known for my stuff business-wise in Grove City, but elsewhere and in certain markets, it is in a lot of places. But I've chosen that path. So, and there's neither one is right or wrong. And I think that come with a different cost.
I think that perspective is an okay perspective. Like to feel small is normal. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't have that perspective, there are some people that just don't know what they don't know, right? If you've never traveled or you've never really seen just how big something can be, then you don't know. But I don't think I think that's a perspective that more people could and should have. That there is a big world outside of the immediate world that you're in every day.
And I struggle with that when we were talking about like Gary Vee, or if you look at really successful entrepreneurs like Tim Ferriss or some of the people, like I mentioned, Amy Porterfield, top people in the industry. What I've discovered, and like when I talked to Amy Porterfield on my podcast, one thing I learned from her is like, well, number one, she has 27 full-time team members. So seeing her out everywhere is because she has a huge support system behind her. And that is not for everyone. Like, she has way more team calls and team meetings than I do. So I've had to learn that too. It's like, again, at what cost? Like, I could be much bigger in the entrepreneurial world, but I'm choosing to retain my authority in just web design right now. I'm not branching into like broad entrepreneurship. I could, but
anonymity in some point. Like you have said her name a couple of times now. I'd never heard that name before in my life. You know what I mean? But that's not a world that I run in.
Different culture.
It's not the world that you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not a world that I run in. It's not a world that I am passionate about. And at the end of the day, like, there are things about my life that I don't mind being public, but there are things about my life that I'd like to be private too.
That's what's interesting too. So when I had her on, a lot of my following were like, "Oh my gosh, she's a legend! I can't believe you got to talk with her." Like, But yeah, a lot of people have no idea, which is really common in the online world now. I mean, pretty much everyone knows celebrities with movies and whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, there are people who like we look up to, and they're like, "Who's that?"
Right,
like
you gotta search it out.
A generation above us,
know who that is.
Yeah, a generation above us might be like, "Who's Joe Rogan?"
Right.
Ric Flair was a singer. Like, no, yeah, yeah, no.
I got my little kids will go like if I say give me 2 claps and Ric Flair, they can do it.
They're nice.
Yeah,
teaching them well.
They can do it.
Yeah, but there is a really valuable point there of like, have vision for yourself with what you want. It can't be what somebody else wants for you, and you do have to be leery of the influencer mark. And I, as an influencer, I'm trying to remind myself like to tell people it's a responsibility. I'm also trying to relay like, this is not the right or wrong way to do this.
Yeah.
This is a way.
Yeah.
This is how I got clients.
Yeah.
You can get clients however the heck you want to do it. Here's a bunch of other strategies, but it has to work for you. So in the context of like, well, what do you want? Do you want to be online a lot and have a bigger impact and get more likes and DMs? Or do you want to like go out and have more in-person relationships?
Not knowing who's at the other end of that DM.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like my world. Like you can either get leads or you can work with people that you know. And I'll find people all the time. They're like, I want to join your team. I'm like, I don't think we're a good fit because I'm going to teach you the way I did it. And it's going to be slower than what you're expecting because of your experience working with this person.
Great
or whatever.
point. Yeah. There's a big difference there. And I think
I can only teach you what I went through.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be inauthentic and teach you something that I don't know.
When it comes to the amount of inbound with DMs and emails and stuff too, then it becomes like, well, how much energy do I have and how much bandwidth
to chase
and time?
these?
So it would be great to have like 1 million downloads on my podcast, but if I'm getting, like 100x the amount of inbound right now, I can't manage it. I'm going to hire somebody to go through my email, which I'm not doing right now. So there is a bit of give and take there with like the vision. Like, do you really like how many people get famous and like, this is the worst thing that
ever happened to me?
Yeah. And it might depend on too. Last thing I was just thinking real quick is like, I don't feel like I need too many local relationships as much now because I'm busy with a young family. Yeah. Both of our families are in town. Just keeping up with my online business, managing family, and the few friends that I still talk to, that's pretty much literally all the time I have for.
And so, I think that's an interesting part, too. One of my first mentors in business, he used to say, I don't need any more friends at this point in my life. He's like, if we're going to be going on the same path and we become friends, that's great. But he was like, at this point in my life, I just don't do things just to search for friends. Like with 3 siblings, my wife has 3 siblings, all the cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. Like, to your point, it's just prioritizing.
And I know you and I had that conversation. I don't know if you remember this. This is like
I'm not joining a softball league to make friends. Like, I like to be active, but I'm not doing it just to meet new people.
I don't know if you remember this. Is like maybe this was last summer, but I called you and I said, "Hey man, what's up?" And we talk, almost every other day, for work. And I called you and I was like, "Hey man, and you're like, but is there something you need?" I don't know if you remember this. And I go, "No, I just feel like we haven't connected in a while." And like almost like a relationship basis, And you're like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I don't know. Like we haven't hung out outside of doing work." Do you remember this at all? And
I can tell you what I think my response would be. Is
and you
I don't
said,
hang out with anybody.
Yes, you said I don't hang out with anybody. He goes, don't take offense to it.
Right.
He goes, you said, we're best of friends, but I don't have time.
Sure.
And we're just in different spots, different whatever. And maybe I was, just being extra moody or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I was having a down day and wanted something nice out of you.
Right.
But
I didn't get it that day.
Yeah. But like, and I think it was literally like I had a slow piece, as a creator. Like I didn't have projects, so I'm like, oh man, I have to rekindle relationships, with people because I've been so hyper focused on this stuff. So I reached out to you, and you're like, well, I don't have time. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's not the response I wanted, but I mean, but you're honest about it.
And I don't mean to be cold, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But
you were
the guy. I was the best man in his wedding. He was the best man in my wedding. Like. Mm-hmm. I'll see him 2 times a year, maybe. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, he's living his life, and we talk, and we text, and, we're going to go up and spend some time at his house here in a couple weeks. But it's just different, but it's an evolution that not a lot of people talk about.
Well, earlier we were talking about like when you grow past your friends, and again, it's not that we're like better than people who aren't in this world, but you do get, especially if they're on a family, and it's like
we're just in different
places.
That's all.
And you do have to almost anticipate and expect like disappointing people. It's like can't do it.
I have to.
I might not get back to you in like a week if it's not a priority.
Would I love to go on that guy's trip with you, or would I love to go golfing on that day? Yeah, I would. But at what cost?
At what cost? Or
yeah.
It's the name of this episode. At what cost?
I like it. Yeah. At what cost?
I like it.
Okay. Well,
free for Grove City today,
but not next week.
Course coming soon.
Yeah. Right. Well, I appreciate your time, Josh.
Yep,
I know we have been. It's funny speaking to this point. Josh was like, "Hey, these are the times I have available," and then our windows synced up. I was like, "Hey, Josh has some availability. Let's get in there and let's shoot." And I think this is information and things that people don't talk about enough.
I hope it helps.
It's the other side of the reel. It's the other side of the Instagram account. Yeah. It's what happens to get there. And I don't run my Instagram account. Alex runs my Instagram account, but
I can tell them what you need to know.
Whatever. But it's it's the things that are behind the scenes, and I think it's I always told Alex, I was like, listen, 4 people might listen to this. It might be me, you, and our spouses. I go, but and hopefully we can bring people on and. We can talk about things that are going to be meaningful to other people.
This was great because I hope it didn't like deter anyone.
No,
from
not at all.
Starting their
I
business.
wouldn't trade where I am for anything.
Yeah, but it is good. It's like heads up.
There are some things you're going to have to figure out.
It's going to come into play. Going back to like the made easy thing.
It's not as simple as profit and loss sheet.
It's actually, I would say, it's a lot easier to get started, but it's almost harder to maintain and sustain.
Correct.
Right. You can buy the uniform, but you got to put in the work, to play the game. So,
Alex is in.
Thank you.
Anyway,
on that note,
you can buy the uniform.
My shoulders got big. So, Josh, for people who don't know you or don't follow you, how can people find you?
Best place is to go to my website, which is joshhall.co.
Okay.
And from there, you can go to my Instagram, YouTube, Facebook.
And no, there's not a cutout there. He is saying CO. JoshHall.co.
Yes, JoshHall.com is a lawyer in Columbus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, actually, one time he got an invoice and he contacted me. He was like, "Hey, Josh, I'm also Josh Hall," and he's like, "I'm actually JoshHall.com." He's like, "I think this is supposed to go to you. It's for something web design related."
And now you guys are best friends.
Yeah, I was like, "Nice to talk to you. You seem like a great guy.
Yeah,
great hair,
great
yeah, right.
You bastard.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show. Well, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's get some drinks and have long stares.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave when you guys do that.
It's so awkward, and I couldn't get out of it. I'm just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to leave while you guys do that.
Thought.
Yeah. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, thank you.